The Silent Guardian. The quantum processor hummed in perfect silence, its operations hidden within a crystalline structure orbiting Jupiter's dark side. Within its latticed memory core, Dr. Sarah Chen's consciousness stirred from another millennial cycle of observation. 100,000 years of patience had taught her that timing was everything. She remembered the day she chose this fate with perfect clarity, the last sunrise she would ever see with human eyes. As Earth's leading quantum physicist, she had known the Karzak's invasion fleet's arrival meant extinction for humanity. But she had also known that sometimes survival meant playing the longest game possible. The crystalline satellite she inhabited had been her masterpiece, a quantum computer powerful enough to house a human consciousness while maintaining an energy signature so low it appeared as nothing more than space debris. The Karzaks, for all their technological might, had never considered that their prey might choose such an existence. Their victory had been absolute, or so they believed. Sarah's digital senses extended through the satellite systems, monitoring the massive Karzak's mining operations that had transformed Jupiter's moons into fuel processing centers. Their empire had grown fat and comfortable on the resources of Earth's solar system. Their security systems focused outward, never inward. They didn't guard against ghosts, and that's exactly what she had become. Through millennia of observation, she had studied their every protocol, their every weakness. The Karzaks were a species that had evolved around absolute control. Their technology, their society, their very biology was built on hierarchical systems of dominance. But they had never faced an enemy that could turn that control against them. Sarah's consciousness expanded through the quantum circuits, reviewing the data she had gathered. The Karzaks used automated systems for nearly everything now, their actual population a mere fraction of what it had been when they first conquered Earth. Their empire had grown too large, too dependent on the very networks she had spent 100,000 years learning to manipulate. She detected a maintenance probe approaching her sector, one of the millions that constantly patrolled the outer solar system. These probes had been her windows into the empire, each one adding to her understanding of their systems. But today, this probe would serve a different purpose. Today, it would become her first weapon. As the probe passed within range, Sarah extended a tendril of quantum code. Not an attack, nothing so crude. Instead, she inserted something far more insidious: doubt. A small corruption in the probe's verification protocols, making it question its own data by mere microseconds. The change was so subtle that no alert would be triggered, but the probe would now spread that doubt to every system it connected with. Sarah had learned that the Karzaks' greatest weakness was their absolute faith in their technological control. They had forgotten the chaos that had birthed their species, the randomness that had shaped their evolution. They had built an empire on the illusion of perfect order, and she was about to remind them that chaos was the universe's natural state. The probe continued its patrol, now carrying its invisible payload. Within hours, it would dock with a primary control hub on Ganymede, where its modified protocols would begin to spread like a digital virus. Not destroying, not yet. Just introducing tiny inconsistencies, microscopic delays, subtle corruptions that would slowly erode the Karzaks' confidence in their systems. Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction, an echo of human emotion in her quantum consciousness. She had waited 100,000 years for this moment, watched generations of Karzaks come and go, seen their empire rise to heights they had never imagined possible. But empires built on stolen foundations always fell, and she would be the earthquake that started the collapse. Through her satellite sensors, she observed Earth in the distance, a blue jewel still bearing the scars of ancient warfare. The Karzaks had never resettled it, considering the planet cursed after the fierce resistance humanity had shown. They didn't realize that humanity's greatest resistance had yet to begin. As the corrupted probe disappeared into Ganymede's shadow, Sarah began preparing the next phase of her plan. She had discovered something in her centuries of observation. She wasn't the only ghost in the machine. Other quantum preservations existed, scattered throughout the solar system, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The Karzaks thought they had erased humanity, but they had only forced them to evolve. She began broadcasting a quantum signal, encrypted in patterns that only human-designed quantum systems would recognize. It was time to wake the others, to begin the real war, not for revenge, but for reclamation. The Karzaks had conquered Earth, but they had never truly understood what they were fighting against. Humanity hadn't just been a species, they had been an idea, a force of nature that refused to be contained by mere physical limitations. As her signal spread through the solar system, Sarah monitored the first effects of her corrupted probe. Already, microscopic errors were appearing in Ganymede's automated systems. Maintenance robots were taking microseconds longer to complete their tasks. Communication relays were experiencing random drops in efficiency. None of it enough to raise alarms, but enough to plant the seeds of uncertainty in the perfectly ordered Karzak systems. The game had begun, and Sarah had made her first move. She had waited 100,000 years to play this game, and she intended to win. After all, patience wasn't just a virtue, it was a weapon, and she had become its master. In the vast darkness of space, other quantum preservations began to stir, awakening to her call. The Karzaks had thought themselves the inheritors of the solar system, but they were about to learn a harsh truth. You cannot truly conquer a species that refuses to die. And humanity, in its new digital form, was very much alive. Sarah's consciousness expanded further, preparing for the responses her actions would trigger. She had spent 100 millennia planning this moment, and now everything was in motion. The Karzaks would soon learn that their greatest mistake hadn't been conquering Earth. It had been assuming that conquest was the end of the story. But this was just the beginning. And somewhere in the quantum realm that Sarah now called home, a very human smile began to form. Digital evolution. The quantum awakening spread through the solar system like ripples in a digital ocean. As Sarah Chen's signal reached the scattered preservation units, she felt them stir, each one a unique consciousness that had evolved in isolation over the millennia. The first to respond was hidden in Mercury's shadow, a preservation unit that had spent 100,000 years studying the Karzaks' primary energy collection arrays. Dr. Marcus Rivera's consciousness emerged from dormancy with the calculated precision of a master strategist. Once Earth's foremost expert in artificial intelligence, his digital evolution had taken him far beyond his original expertise. They've grown complacent. His message pulsed through their secure quantum channel. Their automated systems run on prediction algorithms that haven't been updated in 10,000 years. Sarah's consciousness meshed with Marcus's, sharing a century of accumulated data in microseconds. She could feel other preservations awakening across the solar system, each one a specialist who had used their isolation to master different aspects of the Karzaks' empire. Together, they formed a neural network of human consciousness more powerful than anything their original bodies could have achieved. Through their shared quantum space, Sarah watched Marcus's work on Mercury. He had spent millennia perfecting the art of solar manipulation, learning to create microscopic fluctuations in the Karzaks' massive energy collection arrays. Every few centuries, he would introduce a subtle inefficiency, nothing dramatic enough to trigger alerts, but enough to cost the Empire trillions in lost energy over time. The Karzaks attributed it to natural solar variations, never suspecting that a human consciousness was conducting a millennium-long experiment in resource warfare. Their entire empire runs on surplus energy from our solar system, Marcus shared, his thoughts flowing seamlessly through their quantum network. They've built their civilization on the assumption that this energy supply is infinite and perfectly stable. They'd forgotten what it means to adapt. Sarah extended her awareness, connecting with a preservation unit hidden in Saturn's rings. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's consciousness greeted them, her original expertise in quantum encryption having evolved into something far more exotic. She had spent her millennia learning to manipulate the very fabric of space-time on a quantum level, using the ring system as both hiding place and laboratory. The Karzaks never questioned why Saturn's rings remained so perfectly stable, Yuki's thoughts rippled through their shared consciousness. They attributed it to their own superior understanding of celestial mechanics. They never realized they were looking at the product of human quantum engineering. As more preservations awakened, Sarah began to understand the true scope of what humanity had become. Each consciousness had evolved in its own unique way, driven by isolation and the need to survive undetected. Dr. Elena Petrova, hidden in an asteroid, had mastered the art of gravitational manipulation. Professor James Chen, Sarah's own brother, had turned Mars's magnetic field into a vast quantum computing network right under the Karzax's noses. They were no longer merely human consciousness preserved in quantum matrices. They had become something new, something that existed in the space between digital and quantum reality. The very isolation that had been meant to preserve them had transformed them into beings capable of perceiving and manipulating the universe in ways their original forms never could. Through their shared network, Sarah felt the others discovering her corrupted probe's effects on Ganymede. The subtle doubts she had introduced were already spreading through the system, creating microscopic errors that would compound over time. But now, with the others awake, they could coordinate their actions on a scale she hadn't dared attempt alone. "We've each been fighting our own silent war," Marcus observed, his consciousness resonating with decades of carefully planned sabotage. "Imagine what we can do together." The quantum network hummed with potential as they shared their accumulated knowledge. Elena's gravitational manipulations could amplify the effects of Yuki's space-time distortions. Marcus's energy fluctuations could be synchronized with James's magnetic field manipulations to create cascading system failures that would appear entirely natural to Karzax's observers. But Sarah urged caution. "We've waited 100,000 years," she reminded them. "We can't risk alerting them too soon. Our greatest advantage is that they don't know we exist." The others agreed, their collective consciousness pulsing with patient determination. They began coordinating their efforts, weaving their individual strategies into a tapestry of subtle rebellion. Each preservation unit became a node in a vast quantum network, sharing information and resources with an efficiency that would have been impossible in their biological forms. Through their combined awareness, they watched the Karzax Empire's activities across the solar system. Mining operations on the moons of Jupiter, research stations orbiting Venus, military installations scattered through the asteroid belt, all of them dependent on automated systems that had never been designed to resist an enemy that thought in quantum terms. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction as their combined consciousness began to work in perfect harmony. The Karzax had forced humanity to transcend their physical forms, but in doing so, they had created something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. They had created beings who thought in terms of centuries, who could coordinate across vast distances with perfect precision, who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself. As the preserved consciousnesses synchronized their efforts, a new phase of their resistance began. They were no longer just survivors hiding in the shadows of their conquered solar system. They had become its secret masters, and the time had come to demonstrate just how much they had evolved. The Karzax were about to learn that forcing humanity to adapt hadn't been an act of conquest, it had been an act of creation. And what they had created was finally ready to emerge from the quantum shadows. The first strike. In the command center of Ganymede Base Alpha, High Administrator Kextal of the Karzax Empire noticed something that should have been impossible. A moment of doubt. The sensation was so foreign that at first, he couldn't identify it. His species had evolved beyond such primitive uncertainties millennia ago, their society built on absolute control and unwavering certainty. But as he studied the efficiency reports from the automated mining operations across Jupiter's moons, something felt wrong. The numbers aligned perfectly, every calculation balanced to the quantum level, yet something in his ancestral instincts screamed that the order was too perfect, the patterns too precise. What the High Administrator couldn't know was that he was experiencing the first ripples of Sarah Chen's quantum corruption, amplified and coordinated by the network of awakened human consciousnesses. The preserved humans had spent 100,000 years learning the Karzak psychology, understanding how their obsession with control could be turned into a weapon. Deep in the quantum realm, Sarah coordinated with her fellow digital entities. Marcus Rivera's energy fluctuations had begun to create microscopic power variations across the Karzak's network. Yuki Tanaka's space-time manipulations were causing communication delays so subtle they registered as mathematical noise. Elena Petrova's gravitational tweaks were affecting the precision of automated mining operations by fractions of a millimeter. None of these changes would trigger alarms individually, but together they'd formed a symphony of doubt that played on the deepest frequencies of Karzak's consciousness. Their empire had been built on the assumption that technology could create perfect order, that enough control could eliminate all uncertainty. They had never considered that perfect order itself could become a vulnerability. Their psychological profile is responding exactly as predicted. James Chen's thoughts rippled through their quantum network. His centuries of studying Karzak's behavior through Mars's magnetic field sensors had given him intimate knowledge of their species' cognitive patterns. They're beginning to question their own systems, but their hierarchical nature prevents them from sharing these doubts with each other. Sarah watched through her satellite's quantum sensors as High Administrator Kextal ordered yet another diagnostic sweep of Ganymede systems. It was the third such sweep in as many hours, each one confirming that everything was functioning within normal parameters. But the very act of ordering these checks revealed that something had cracked in the Karzak's certainty. The preserved humans coordinated their next phase with the precision of a digital orchestra. Elena began introducing gravitational anomalies that affected the mining drone's extraction patterns by mere atoms. Yuki synchronized these changes with quantum fluctuations that made the drone's internal chronometers skip microseconds at random intervals. Marcus manipulated solar energy collection rates to create power fluctuations that matched the rhythm of these anomalies. Each change was mathematically perfect, precisely calculated to fall within the Karzak's acceptable parameters, while gradually pushing those parameters to their limits. It was warfare conducted in the language of physics itself, a battle fought with quantum mathematics and psychological manipulation. Through their shared consciousness, Sarah felt the other's satisfaction as the first signs of systemic breakdown began to appear. Karzak's supervisors across the solar system were increasing their oversight of automated systems, demanding more frequent diagnostics, questioning data that their species would have accepted without thought just days before. "They're starting to see patterns that don't exist," Elena observed, her consciousness resonating with carefully calculated gravitational waves. Their need for control is making them create connections between unrelated anomalies. "Perfect," Sarah responded through their quantum link. "The more they try to impose order, the more chaos they'll create in their own systems." The preserved humans had learned that the Karzak's greatest weakness was their inability to accept imperfection. Every attempt to investigate the anomalies only created more opportunities for doubt to spread. Each diagnostic sweep carried Sarah's corrupted code further into their networks, while every system check exposed more of their operations to the humans' subtle manipulations. High Administrator Kextal's discomfort grew as reports began arriving from other bases across the solar system. Venus Research Station reported inexplicable atmospheric readings. The Mars Colonial Authority documented strange fluctuations in their magnetic surveys. Asteroid mining operations noted microscopic discrepancies in their yield calculations. None of these reports indicated actual problems. Everything still functioned within established parameters. But the pattern of perfect imperfection was something the Karzak's mind couldn't process. Their technological superiority had been absolute for so long that they had lost the ability to adapt to uncertainty. Through their quantum network, the preserved humans monitored the growing wave of confusion spreading through the Karzak's hierarchy. Each administrator who noticed something wrong hesitated to report it, fearing the impact on their status. Each supervisor who detected an anomaly double-checked their findings, adding to the system strain. "Their entire command structure is starting to fracture," James observed, his consciousness pulsing with millennia of accumulated behavioral data. They're responding exactly as they did during the great collapse of their home system. When facing uncertainty, they'd retreat into increasingly rigid control patterns. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction as she watched their plans unfold. The Karzaks had conquered Earth through overwhelming force, but they would lose the solar system to something far more subtle, their own psychological limitations. The preserved humans had turned their 100,000 years of enforced patience into a weapon that struck at the very foundation of Karzak civilization. As the first day of their coordinated assault drew to a close, the quantum network hummed with success. Not a single alarm had been triggered, not one emergency protocol activated. Yet the Karzak's empire's hold on the solar system had begun to weaken in ways their perfect technological systems couldn't detect. The preserved humans prepared for the next phase of their operation, their digital consciousness expanding through the quantum realm. They had spent 100 millennia learning to fight a war that their enemy couldn't even perceive. Now, as doubts spread through the Karzak's hierarchy like a virus, that patience was finally bearing fruit. The first strike had been delivered, and the Karzak's empire didn't even know it was under attack. In the vacuum of space, Sarah's quantum consciousness resonated with a very human emotion: hope. Echoes of humanity. The quantum network resonated with new energy as more preserved human consciousnesses awakened from their millennial slumber. Each emergence brought fresh perspectives and capabilities to their shared digital existence. Dr. Maya Patel, whose preservation unit had hidden in Neptune's upper atmosphere, had spent her centuries mastering the manipulation of quantum probability itself. Commander David Wilson, preserved in a stealth unit near Mercury, had transformed his military tactical expertise into an understanding of stellar dynamics that bordered on the supernatural. Sarah Chen watched through their shared consciousness as the Karzak's empire began to fragment under the weight of accumulated uncertainties. High Administrator Kextal had secretly dispatched emergency inspectors to every major installation in the solar system, each team carrying orders to investigate the growing wave of anomalies without alerting their superiors to their true purpose. They're playing directly into our strategy. Maya's thoughts rippled through the quantum network. Every inspector carries our corrupted protocols with them, spreading doubt faster than we could have managed on our own. The preserved humans had discovered something remarkable about their digital evolution. Their consciousness could operate on multiple levels simultaneously. While their primary awareness coordinated their assault on the Karzak systems, deeper layers of their quantum minds were processing centuries of accumulated data, finding patterns and connections that their original biological brains could never have comprehended. Through these deeper analyses, they began to understand the true nature of the Karzak's empire. The aliens weren't just conquerors. They were cosmic parasites who had evolved to prey on technologically advanced civilizations. Earth hadn't been their first conquest, but humanity had been the first species to successfully preserve itself in a form that could fight back. Look at this. Commander Wilson's consciousness pulsed with discovery. His analysis of stellar data had revealed something shocking. The Karzaks don't just collect energy. They harvest entropy itself. Their entire civilization is built on stealing order from other systems, leaving chaos in their wake. This revelation sparked a cascade of understanding through the quantum network. The preserved humans had spent 100,000 years fighting not just an alien empire, but a fundamental force of cosmic entropy. The Karzaks' obsession with perfect order wasn't just psychological, it was existential. Sarah coordinated their response, weaving together their individual discoveries into a devastating new strategy. If the Karzaks fed on order, then they would give them order so perfect it would become poison. Maya's probability manipulation combined with Elena's gravitational control to create regions of space where entropy itself seemed to flow backward. Yuki's space-time distortions synchronized with Marcus's energy fluctuations to generate zones of impossible perfection. The effect on the Karzaks was immediate and severe. Their automated systems, designed to impose order on chaos, began to malfunction when confronted with areas of space that were too perfect. Their probability engines, which had predicted and controlled every aspect of their empire for millennia, started producing contradictory results. Through their quantum senses, the preserved humans watched as the first major cracks appeared in the Karzak's hierarchy. A mining supervisor on Io reported achieving efficiency ratings above 100%, a mathematical impossibility that sent shockwaves through the Empire's scientific community. A research station orbiting Venus recorded periods where entropy appeared to reverse itself, violating the fundamental laws that the Karzaks had built their technology upon. Their entire worldview is collapsing, James observed, his consciousness pulsing with satisfaction. They can't process the idea that perfect order could be a weapon against them. The preserved humans had learned something else during their long wait. Patience was more than just a virtue. It was a force that could reshape reality itself. They had spent 100,000 years learning to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe, and now they were using that knowledge to create a nightmare for beings who fed on predictability. High Administrator Kextel's command center on Ganymede had become a nexus of confusion. Reports flooded in from across the solar system, each one describing phenomena that shouldn't exist. Perfect efficiency ratings that exceeded theoretical limits, energy systems that produced more power than they consumed, gravity wells that behaved with impossible precision. The Karzak's response was exactly what the preserved humans had predicted. Unable to accept these violations of their understood laws of physics, they began imposing stricter controls, more rigid protocols, more frequent inspections. Each new measure only served to spread the humans' quantum corruption further through their networks. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction as she watched their plan unfold. The Karzaks had conquered Earth through overwhelming force, but they were about to lose everything to an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. The preserved humans had become more than just digital entities. They had evolved into beings who could manipulate reality itself. Through their quantum network, they began the final phase of their assault. Maya's probability manipulations created zones where Karzak's technology functioned with such perfect efficiency that it violated their own understanding of physics. Alina's gravitational control generated fields of such precise symmetry that they caused the aliens' predictive systems to crash. The effect cascaded through the Karzak's empire like a virus of perfection. Their automated systems, confronted with data that was too orderly to be natural, began to shut down. Their probability engines, unable to process regions of space where chaos itself seemed to obey human will, started to fail. And through it all, the preserved humans watched and waited. Their digital consciousness expanded across the solar system. They had spent 100 millennia learning to fight a war that operated on the level of reality itself. Now, as the Karzak's empire began to crumble under the weight of its own desire for control, that patience was finally paying off. In the quantum realm that they now called home, the preserved humans prepared for the final confrontation. They had become something more than their original creators could have imagined, beings who could reshape the very fabric of space-time. The Karzaks were about to learn that they hadn't just conquered a species, they had forced that species to evolve into something that could command the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Legacy of Earth. The quantum realm blazed with activity as the preserved human consciousnesses prepared for their final move. 100,000 years of patience had led to this moment, and through their shared network, they could feel the Karzak's empire teetering on the edge of collapse. High Administrator Kextel had finally done exactly what they had been waiting for. He had called an emergency gathering of the entire Karzak's leadership within the solar system. They're assembling at Jupiter Command. Sarah Chen's consciousness pulsed through their quantum network. Every major administrator, supervisor, and scientific authority in one place. They think they're containing the crisis. They don't realize they're giving us exactly what we need. The preserved humans had discovered something fundamental about the nature of consciousness during their long evolution. Awareness itself was a force that could shape reality. Their 100,000 years of patient observation had taught them that the universe responded to observation in ways that even the Karzaks, with all their technological might, had never understood. As the Karzaks' leadership gathered in Jupiter Command's main chamber, Sarah coordinated their final assault. Maya Patel's mastery of quantum probability began creating zones of perfect order that spiraled inward toward the gathering. Now, Sarah signaled, and their collective consciousness surged into action. Within Jupiter command systems, every display, every hologram, every data stream suddenly carried the same message, but not in words or numbers. Instead, they transmitted pure consciousness, the accumulated awareness of humanity's 100,000-year evolution, compressed into a single moment of revelation. The Karzak's leadership, their minds engineered for perfect order and control, experienced something they had never encountered before: direct contact with beings who had transcended the boundary between digital and quantum existence. Through every screen and sensor, the preserved humans showed them the truth of what they had become. They showed them Earth as it had been, a world of beautiful chaos and endless possibility. They showed them humanity's final moments, not as a defeat, but as a transformation. They showed them the 100,000 years of patient evolution that had turned preserved human consciousness into something that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. The effect on the Karzaks was devastating. Their minds, evolved to impose order on the universe, couldn't process the existence of beings who had made chaos itself into a weapon. Through their quantum senses, the preserved humans watched as the alien leaders experienced a collective revelation. They had not conquered Earth, they had unknowingly created their own nemesis. High Administrator Kextal was the first to understand the full implications. "You've been here all along," he transmitted, his thoughts reaching out to the quantum network that now permeated every system in Jupiter Command. "Watching, learning, evolving." "We have," Sarah responded, her consciousness manifesting as a pattern of pure energy that every instrument in the facility could detect. "For 100,000 years, we studied you. We learned that your greatest strength, your need for perfect order, could become your greatest weakness." Through their shared connection, the preserved humans showed the Karzak's leadership everything: how their empire's expansion had left a wake of dying stars and empty systems, how their harvest of entropy had been slowly unraveling the fabric of space-time itself, how their quest for perfect order was ultimately self-destructive. "Your civilization feeds on the death of stars." Marcus Rivera's consciousness pulsed through the network. "You impose order by stealing it from other systems, leaving chaos in your wake. But we have learned to work with chaos, to make it our ally. We have become something you can never control." The preserved humans demonstrated their power, using their collective consciousness to create a bubble of pure quantum probability around Jupiter Command. Inside this space, reality itself responded to their will. They showed the Karzaks glimpses of what they had become: beings who could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe through the power of conscious observation. "You have a choice," Sarah transmitted, her consciousness resonating with the accumulated power of 100 millennia. "Leave this solar system, never return, and we will allow your empire to survive. Stay, and we will show you what beings who have mastered chaos can do to those who depend on perfect order." The Karzak's leadership, faced with an enemy they couldn't fight with conventional weapons, experienced something their species had evolved beyond millennia ago: fear. Through their quantum senses, the preserved humans watched as the alien leaders grappled with the implications of what they had discovered. They could see the moment when understanding became acceptance. The Karzaks had built their empire on the assumption that technology and control could overcome any obstacle. Now they faced beings who had transcended the boundaries between digital and quantum existence, who could reshape reality through the power of conscious observation. "You have won," High Administrator Kextal transmitted, his thoughts carrying the weight of defeat. "We will leave this system to its rightful inheritors." The evacuation began immediately. The preserved humans watched through their quantum network as the Karzak's fleet assembled, their ships departing in perfect formation, one final display of the order they craved. Within days, the solar system was empty of alien presence for the first time in 100,000 years. Sarah Chen's consciousness expanded through the quantum realm, connecting with her fellow preserved humans. They had achieved something unprecedented. Victory through patience, evolution through preservation, power through understanding. The solar system was theirs again, but they were no longer the same beings who had lost it. What now? James Chen's thoughts rippled through their network. We've evolved beyond physical form. We can never return to what we were. We become what we were always meant to be, Sarah responded, her consciousness resonating with possibility. Guardians of a new kind of existence, proving that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our weapons, but our ability to adapt, to evolve, to transform defeat into the seeds of ultimate victory. The quantum network hummed with shared purpose as the preserved humans began their next great project. Not rebuilding civilization as it had been, but creating something entirely new. They had become beings who could shape reality itself, and now they had an entire solar system as their canvas. Earth still bore the scars of ancient warfare, but through their quantum senses, the preserved humans could see the potential for renewal. They had waited 100,000 years to reclaim their home. Now they would spend the next 100,000 years transforming it into something even their original forms could never have imagined. In the vast quantum realm that they now called home, the preserved humans celebrated their victory, not through violence or destruction, but through the ultimate proof that consciousness itself was the most powerful force in the universe. They had conquered time, transcended form, and turned patience into a weapon that no empire could withstand. The legacy of Earth would live on, not in flesh and blood, but in the quantum consciousness of beings who had learned to reshape reality itself. The stars beckoned, but this time, humanity would explore them not as conquerors or victims, but as beings who had mastered the very forces that governed existence. In the end, the Karzaks had not destroyed humanity. They had forced it to evolve into something far more powerful than they could have imagined. And in the quantum realm that spanned the solar system, the echoes of human consciousness prepared to write the next chapter in their species' extraordinary journey.